Hello class, today we're going to be talking about comparing and ordering rational numbers. So some key vocabulary here would be ascending order and descending order. I always like to think of it as walking up and down some stairs. So if you're going up some stairs, you're ascending, you're going from the smallest to the largest. Whereas if you're descending the stairs and you're going down, you're starting from the biggest step and then going down to the smallest step. You're going from the top to the bottom. Again, we are going to be dealing with number lines, so make sure that we are familiar with what the number line looks like. We know 0 is right in the middle. It's neither positive nor negative. Positive numbers are going to the right. I'm getting bigger and bigger, whereas negative numbers are to the left, and I'm getting smaller and smaller. Remember, fractions, decimals, and percents all make up what we call rational numbers. So we're going to do some of these together. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks, and then I'm going to kind of take the training wheels off, and you guys are going to work on your own. So it says, write the numbers on the number line in ascending order. So I know ascending means I'm going to kind of go up my stairs. You could also think of that as least to greatest. So I could also write something like L to G. I'm going from the least and I'm going up to the greatest. So an interesting thing to note here is I have positive and negative numbers. So a negative number is always going to be smaller than a positive number. So let's start with the negative numbers first. I've got what looks like negative 1/3, and I have negative 87 hundredths. So what I remember about negative numbers is that the bigger the magnitude, the bigger the negative number looks, the further away from 0 it's going to be. So negative 0.87 is pretty close to 1. We'll say it's about here, negative 0.87. That was supposed to be an 8. 0.87. Negative 1/3 is a little closer to 0. I can put that over here, negative 1/3. 50% is exactly 0.5, so I can write that right on top, 50%. And lastly, we have 3/10. 3/10 is less than 5/10, so maybe I can write it somewhere over here. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my numbers and I'm trying to put them on the number line to see how they interact with each other. Now that they're on the number line, I can clearly see that, okay, this is the first number, second number, third number, fourth number. So the values in ascending order, I'm not going to write them again. You guys can just look, or maybe I can write numbers down. So this was the first, and then this one, this was third, and lastly 50% was the biggest. We're going to do a couple more like this. So order from greatest to least this time. So now I'm starting with the biggest number and I'm going down. So when I look at these numbers, I see a couple fractions. I'm seeing some percents, I'm seeing some decimals. The cool thing about ordering these using the number line or kind of using some other kind of reasoning is that we don't have to convert all of these to match. So I know 4/5, well, I know 1/5 is 20%, so I think 4/5 would just be 4 times that. So I think this is really 80%. And when I look at this, I think 80% is the biggest number here. So 4/5 is going to come first. Next, I've got some numbers that are all pretty close together. In case we're unfamiliar, 2/3 is really 1/3 times 2. So 1/3 is 0.3 repeating, which means 2 of those would be 0.6 repeating, which looks like it's bigger than these. So I know this might come next, since we're doing greatest to least. And then I'm left with 60% and 0.65. 60% is 6/10. Remember, if we convert percents to decimals, I can do that trick where I move it 2 places to the left. So this is really 0.6, which is smaller than 0.65. So I know 0.65 is going to come next. And then I'm left with my 60% at the end. So I didn't have to convert these at all. I'm just kind of using that reasoning piece. Next, we've got ascending order. So again, make sure we're keeping track of what ascending means. Ascending means going up. So I want to start from the smallest and go up to the biggest. Just like we saw before, if I have any negative numbers, those have to be the smallest numbers that I have. So I'm just going to look at these negative numbers first. Negative 0.025 repeating is a very, very, very small number. But because it's a small number that's negative, it's actually going to be pretty close to 0. Negative 1/7 is bigger, or not bigger, 1/7 is bigger than this decimal, which means if it's negative, it's going to be further away from 0. So negative 1/7 is going to be first. And then I have that other negative number, negative 0.025 repeating. And then I've got my my fraction here, my decimal over here. 1/8 is really 0.125, which means that's going to come next. And then I have 2/10. So again, I'm just trying to pick this apart and really think which comes first, which comes second. Next, I've got order from least to greatest. Again, start with a small one and then go all the way up. If I'm looking here, 2/3 is more than 50%. 48 is about 50%, not quite there, so it's a little smaller. 109% is way bigger than 50%. It's bigger than 1, actually. So the smallest number here is going to be 11 hundredths, 0.11. And then what I was saying before, these two numbers are pretty close to 50%, but 48% is smaller, which means it has to be the smaller number. 48%. Next is my 2/3. And then finally I have 109%. And then finally I'm ordering in descending order. We haven't seen descending yet, but just think of it as going down some stairs. So again, I have some negative numbers. I think negative 2.1 is definitely farther away from 0, so I'll have negative 2.1 here. Next, I've got my other negative number. So because these are the same number, but one of them is negative, that has to be the smaller number. And then I've got, actually I made a little bit of a mistake. So it looks like I've got 0.5, which is 50%, and I have 5 hundredths, which anything out of 100 is my percent there. So 5 out of 100 is really 5%, which is the smaller number here. And then finally I have that 0.5. And then finally we're kind of comparing numbers here. So I've got negative 3/4 and I have negative 0.75. Those actually end up being the same number. And then I have 2/5 and 0.44. So with the fractions, make sure we're double checking. If I know what 1/5 is, I can easily find out what 2/5 is. I know 1/5 is 0.2, or 2 hundredths. So if I have 2 of them, right, if I multiply this by 2, I'd end up with 0.4. And I'm comparing, well, 0.4 is less than 0.44, right? 4/10 is less than 44 hundredths, which means this is my bigger number. So I'm going to ask you guys to pause the video. There is a you try down here as well as these couple questions. So I would like you guys to pause the video, try to work through those, use the number line that it gives you, and then when you're done, we can kind of come back and talk about it. So finally, those answers. I was able to kind of do these very quickly, so you can compare your answers here with what you've got, and I'll see you in class.